Camilla, darling, you really should take better care of your jewellery. My mother-in-law's voice dripped with false sweetness as she held up my grandmother's emerald ring, the one I'd been frantically searching for all morning, the one that had been sitting in my jewellery box just yesterday, the one that was now sparkling on another woman's finger. Mum, what are you... I started, but the words died in my throat as I saw who was wearing it. Isabella, my husband's first love, the woman who'd waltzed back into our lives 3 months ago claiming she needed closure, the same woman who was now standing in my living room, admiring my ring on her finger like it belonged there. Oh, this old thing, Isabella giggled, holding up her hand to catch the light. When Mrs. Blackwood told me about your carelessness with family heirlooms, I offered to keep it safe. You know how sentimental these pieces can be. My blood turned to ice. That ring has been in my family for 4 generations. My grandmother gave it to me on her deathbed. Grandmother's jewellery should stay in the family, my mother-in-law said with a dismissive wave. And since you and Daniel haven't been able to give us grandchildren, the implication hung in the air like poison. I looked around the room, at my husband Daniel, who wouldn't meet my eyes, at his parents who stood behind Isabella like bodyguards, at the woman wearing my most precious possession like a trophy. Daniel, I whispered, my voice breaking, tell them about the ring. He finally looked at me, and what I saw in his eyes shattered the last piece of my heart. Guilt, resignation, and something else, relief. Camilla, he said quietly, maybe it's time we talked about us. That's when I knew. This wasn't about the ring. This was about replacement. They'd already chosen my successor, and they were systematically erasing me from their lives, starting with my grandmother's ring. You planned this, I breathed. All of you. Isabella had the audacity to look sympathetic. Sweetheart, we're not trying to hurt you. We just think... Don't! The word exploded from me with such force that even she stepped back. Don't you dare call me sweetheart while wearing my grandmother's ring. But as I reached for it, Isabella pulled her hand away and tucked it behind her back. I think it's safer with me for now. You seem unstable. The room spun. 5 years of marriage, 5 years of trying to conceive, 5 years of enduring their subtle jabs and not so subtle hints that I wasn't good enough for their precious son. And now this, the ultimate humiliation. Get out, I whispered. Camilla, let's discuss this rationally, my father-in-law began. Get out, I screamed, grabbing the nearest object, a crystal vase, and hurling it at the wall. It shattered into 1,000 pieces, just like my heart. They left quickly after that, Isabella clutching her hand protectively to her chest, my ring still glinting on her finger. Daniel lingered for a moment at the door. Camilla, Save it. I turned my back to him. Just save it. The door closed with a soft click, and I was alone with the wreckage of my marriage and the echo of my grandmother's last words. This ring has protected our family for generations, darling. As long as you wear it, you'll never truly be alone. I laughed bitterly through my tears. So much for protection. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced my empty house because, yes, it was mine, bought with my inheritance, and replayed every moment, every sign I'd missed. How long had they been planning this? How long had Daniel been seeing Isabella again? I was reaching for my phone to call my lawyer when I heard it. The screech of tires, the sickening crunch of metal on metal. The drunk driver who ran the red light never even hit his brakes. As I lay there on the asphalt, my vision blurring, I saw something impossible. Isabella standing over me, my grandmother's ring catching the streetlight. But instead of concern, her face held something else entirely. Satisfaction. Poor Camilla, she whispered, leaning down so only I could hear. Always so careless. If only you'd been more careful with what was precious to you. The last thing I remember was her walking away, my ring still on her finger as the world faded to black. But death, it turned out, wasn't the end. I woke up 3 days before the ring disappeared. 3 days before my world fell apart. 3 days to change everything. This time I was ready for them. I stood in my kitchen pouring coffee with steady hands when I heard the familiar sound of my mother-in-law's key in the lock. They'd never returned that key. Another sign I'd missed the first time around. "Camilla, darling," her voice rang out exactly as it had before. "We brought someone to meet you." I took a slow sip of my coffee and smiled. This time, I knew exactly who they'd brought and why. But this time, I had a plan. They walked into my kitchen like they owned it, which, in their minds, they probably did. Isabella looked exactly the same. Perfectly styled blonde hair, designer outfit, that practiced smile that had fooled me before. "Camilla, this is Isabella," my mother-in-law said with false enthusiasm. "She's an old friend of Daniel's." "How lovely," I said, setting down my coffee cup. "I've heard so much about you." Isabella's smile flickered slightly. That wasn't the response she'd expected. The first time around, I'd been polite but distant. This time, I wanted her to know I knew exactly who she was. "All good things, I hope," she said carefully. "Oh, absolutely." I moved to the cabinet where I kept my jewellery box, the one they'd raided in 3 days. "Daniel's told me all about his first love, how you broke his heart when you chose money over him, how you married that oil executive instead." The room went dead silent. Even my mother-in-law looked shocked. Isabella's face turned white. That's not exactly how you divorced him last year when the prenup didn't work out in your favour." I opened the jewellery box and pulled out my grandmother's ring, holding it up to catch the morning light. "How you suddenly discovered you made a mistake and wanted Daniel back." Daniel stepped forward, his face flushed. "Camilla, that's enough." "Is it?" I slipped the ring onto my finger where it belonged, because I find it fascinating that your old friend shows up the same week I get the call about my inheritance coming through. What an interesting coincidence. My father-in-law cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Perhaps we should go." "Oh, please don't leave on my account," I said sweetly. "I was just admiring my grandmother's ring. It's funny, she always said it had a way of revealing people's true intentions. Like a truth detector." Isabella's eyes were fixed on the ring with an intensity that would have alarmed me before. Now, it just confirmed what I already knew. "It's beautiful," she said softly. May I see it closer?" And there it was. The first move in their game. The same words, the same tone, the same predatory gleam in her eyes. "Of course not," I said with a bright smile. "Family heirlooms shouldn't leave the family, don't you think? Besides, you know what they say about other people's jewellery. Bad luck." The look that passed between Isabella and my mother-in-law was everything I needed to see. They'd expected the same pushover they manipulated before. Instead, they'd found someone who knew their game better than they did. "Well," my mother-in-law said stiffly, "we should let you get ready for work." "Actually," I said, still smiling, "I took the day off. I have some very important calls to make, starting with my lawyer." Daniel's head snapped up. "Your lawyer? Why?" "Oh, just some estate planning. Updating my will, making sure my inheritance is properly protected. You know how important it is to keep family assets in the family." I watched as the implications sank in. In their original plan, they'd counted on my inheritance to fund their new life together. Now, they realised I might not be the naive victim they thought I was. "Camilla," Isabella said, her voice taking on a harder edge, "I hope you're not suggesting—" "I'm not suggesting anything," I interrupted. "I'm simply being practical. After all, marriage is so unpredictable these days. People change, priorities shift, old flames reappear." I walked them to the door, my grandmother's ring secure on my finger. As they reached the threshold, I called out one last thing. "Oh, and Isabella? The next time you visit, please call first. I'd hate for there to be any misunderstandings." The door closed behind them, and I leaned against it, my heart pounding. Round one was mine, but I knew this was just the beginning. They thought they were playing chess with a pawn. They had no idea they were facing a queen who'd already seen the endgame. 2 hours after they left, my phone rang. Daniel's name flashed on the screen, and I let it ring twice before answering. Not too eager, but not dismissive either. I needed him to think he still had some control. "Camilla, we need to talk." His voice was strained. "What you said to Isabella was completely out of line." "Was it?" I asked, examining my nails with practiced indifference. "I thought I was being quite honest. Isn't honesty what marriage is built on? You embarrassed her. She was crying when we left. I almost laughed. Isabella crying? The same woman who'd coldly watched me die on that street? Poor thing. Perhaps she's not as tough as she pretends to be. Camilla, Daniel, I'm curious about something, I interrupted, moving to my laptop. How exactly did Isabella know where we live? I don't remember you giving her our address. Silence. Then, my mother might have. I clicked open my bank account, the one Daniel didn't know about, funded by my grandmother's trust that matured when I turned 30. Your mother. The same mother who somehow has a key to our house that I never gave her. She's my mother, Camilla. Of course she has a key. Interesting perspective on marriage, darling. Here, I thought when two people got married, they became each other's primary family. I paused, letting that sink in. But clearly, I've been misunderstanding our arrangement. In the background, I could hear Isabella's voice, sharp and demanding. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clear. She was giving him instructions. Look, Daniel said finally, can we meet for dinner tonight? Just us. We can talk about everything. Everything. He meant the divorce papers I hadn't filed yet, the inheritance I'd inherit next month, and how to divide assets he thought were partially his. In my previous life, I'd gone to that dinner with hope in my heart, thinking we could work things out. I'd signed whatever he put in front of me, grateful he was willing to try. This time, I knew exactly what documents would be waiting for me. Of course, sweetheart. Romano's at 8. Same restaurant where he'd proposed. He always did have a twisted sense of poetry. Perfect. I love you, Camilla. The lie rolled off his tongue so smoothly. I wondered how many times he'd practiced it. I love you too. After hanging up, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to my lawyer, Marcus Westfield, a shark in an expensive suit who'd been my grandmother's attorney for 20 years. Camilla, darling, how lovely to hear from you. Though I suspect this isn't a social call. Marcus, I need an emergency consultation. This afternoon, if possible. Of course. Shall I assume this has to do with your husband's recent extracurricular activities? I blinked in surprise. You know about Isabella? My dear girl, I make it my business to know about threats to my clients' interests. She's been quite busy since returning to town, lunching with your mother-in-law, visiting real estate agents, even making inquiries about your family's holdings. The audacity was breathtaking. She'd been planning this takeover for months, while I'd been clueless. I need to protect my assets, all of them. Consider it done. Come in at 3. I'll have preliminary papers ready. My second call was to my cousin James, who ran a private investigation firm. He owed me a favour from when I'd helped him through his own messy divorce. Camilla, don't tell me you're finally ready to dig up dirt on that husband of yours. Something like that. I need everything you can find on Isabella Martinez. And I mean everything. Financial records, employment history, that oil executive she married. I need it by tonight. Rush job will cost extra. Money is not an issue. My third call was the most important one. I dialed a number I'd memorised but never had the courage to use. Blackstone Industries, Mr. Blackstone's office. This is Camilla Williams. I'd like to schedule a meeting with Mr. Blackstone regarding a business proposition. Today, if possible. Alexander Blackstone, tech mogul, venture capitalist, and the man who'd been quietly buying up property in our neighbourhood for the past year. He was also Isabella's ex-husband's biggest business rival. In my previous life, I'd learned about their connection too late to matter. This time, I was getting ahead of the game. Mr. Blackstone has an opening at 5. Shall I confirm? Perfect. At 3, Marcus laid out my options with surgical precision. Your inheritance is protected. It's in trust until you turn 31 next month. However, your current assets, including the house, could be subject to division. What if Daniel voluntarily signs away his rights to marital property? Marcus raised an eyebrow. He'd need significant motivation to do that. What if he thought he was getting something better in return? Such as... I pulled out my phone and showed him the photos I'd taken of a property listing, a penthouse downtown that Isabella had been viewing yesterday. What if he thought he was trading a suburban house for this, courtesy of my inheritance? Camilla, you're not seriously considering... I am considering showing him exactly what he thinks he wants, and letting him choose. I leaned forward. Can you draft a separation agreement that makes it look like I'm desperately trying to save my marriage by offering him everything? Marcus's shark-like smile told me everything I needed to know. At 5, Alexander Blackstone turned out to be exactly what I'd expected. Sharp suit, sharper eyes, and the kind of presence that commanded rooms. What I hadn't expected was how young he was, or how intently he listened when I explained my proposal. You want me to make an offer on Isabella Martinez's apartment building, he said slowly, the one where she's been staying since her return. Not just an offer, a purchase, above market value, with a clause requiring all current tenants to vacate within 30 days. And why would I want to do that? I slid a folder across his desk. Because Isabella Martinez is actually Isabella Rodriguez. She never legally divorced her first husband before marrying the oil executive, which means her divorce settlement is fraudulent, and she's currently facing federal charges for wire fraud. His eyes lit up with genuine interest. How did you... Let's just say people underestimate suburban housewives. I stood to leave. The building will be a good investment regardless. But the timing, well, that's what makes it perfect. By 7, I had everything I needed. James had delivered a file thick enough to end 3 careers. Marcus had crafted legal documents that looked like desperate surrender, but were actually strategic genius. And Alexander's offer had already been accepted by Isabella's landlord. I dressed carefully for dinner. The blue dress Daniel loved, the pearl necklace that had been his wedding gift to me, and of course, my grandmother's ring. I wanted to look like the devoted wife he was about to betray. Romano's was crowded, which was perfect. Daniel was already there, looking nervous and checking his phone constantly. When he saw me, his face lit up with what might have been genuine relief. You look beautiful, he said, standing to kiss my cheek. Thank you. I let him pull out my chair, playing the part perfectly. You seem tense. Everything all right? Just work stuff. He was lying, but I pretended to believe him. Order whatever you want. Tonight's special. We made small talk through the appetizer, and I watched him get more relaxed as he drank wine and convinced himself this was going according to plan. Finally, as our entrees arrived, he cleared his throat. Camilla, I've been thinking about what you said this morning. About marriage and family and priorities. Oh, I think you're right. We need to be honest with each other. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. I've been talking to a lawyer. Have you? I kept my voice soft. Hurt, but not angry. About what? About us. About our future. He slid the envelope across the table. I think we both know this isn't working anymore. I stared at the envelope like it was a snake. Inside would be divorce papers that gave him half of everything, plus alimony, plus a claim on my inheritance. In my previous life, I'd signed them through tears, begging him to reconsider. Daniel, I whispered, is there someone else? His face flushed. It's not about someone else. It's about us growing apart. Such a practiced lie. I picked up the envelope with trembling fingers, trembling with rage, though he mistook it for grief. If this is what you want, I said quietly, then I won't fight you. I just want you to be happy. Relief flooded his features. He'd expected a scene, tears, pleading. Instead, he was getting exactly what every cheating husband dreamed of, a wife who'd go quietly. There's just one thing, I continued, pulling out my own envelope. I had my lawyer draw up something too. A separation agreement. I know divorce can be complicated, but if we're going to do this, I want it to be fair. He frowned, clearly not expecting this. What kind of agreement? I keep the house and my personal assets. You get a lump sum settlement instead of alimony. I paused, watching his eyes calculate. $500,000. His fork stopped halfway to his mouth. 500,000? From my inheritance. I know it's not everything, but... No, that's very generous. His pupils dilated slightly. 500,000 was exactly what Isabella needed to buy that penthouse. There's just one condition, I said softly. You have to choose tonight. Sign my agreement or we'll go through with the traditional divorce process and let the lawyers fight it out. He was practically salivating. A quick, clean break with a massive payout versus months of legal battles with uncertain outcomes. I need to make a phone call, he said, already standing. Of course, I'll wait. I watched through the restaurant window as he stepped outside and called Isabella. Even from a distance, I could see her excitement when he told her about the money. She was probably already picking out furniture for their new life together. When he came back, his smile was brighter than I'd seen in years. Okay, he said, pulling out a pen. Let's do this. As he signed away his rights to everything we'd built together, I felt a satisfaction so deep, it was almost spiritual. He thought he was getting away with the perfect crime. He had no idea he'd just signed his own prison sentence. I woke up the next morning to find Daniel already gone. His side of the bed was cold, and his coffee cup was missing from the kitchen. He was probably at Isabella's apartment, celebrating their victory and planning how to spend my inheritance money. Perfect. By noon, my phone was buzzing with texts from my mother-in-law. Camilla, we need to talk. This is urgent. Call me immediately. I let her stew for another hour before calling back. Camilla. Her voice was sharp with panic. Daniel told me about your arrangement. This is completely unacceptable. I'm sorry, what exactly is unacceptable? I kept my tone confused and hurt. I thought you'd be happy. Daniel gets what he wants, and nobody has to drag this through the courts. $500,000 is robbery. That money belongs to the family. There it was. The Blackwood family had never seen me as anything more than a walking inheritance. I'm confused, Mum. I thought you wanted Daniel to be happy. Isn't this what's best for everyone? Don't you dare mum me. You're trying to steal what's rightfully ours. Actually, I said quietly, according to the separation agreement Daniel signed, he waived all claims to my inheritance. So, technically, it's rightfully mine. The line went dead. I could practically hear the family emergency meeting being called. 20 minutes later, Daniel burst through the front door like a man possessed. Camilla, what did you do? I made coffee, I said mildly, not looking up from my laptop. Would you like some? Don't play dumb. My mother called the lawyer. She said you tricked me. Tricked you? I finally looked at him, letting genuine confusion colour my voice. Daniel, you read the agreement. You said it was generous. You signed it voluntarily. You didn't tell me I was giving up my inheritance rights. Your inheritance rights? I stood slowly, letting my voice rise just enough. Daniel, it's my inheritance, from my family. What exactly did you think you were entitled to? His face flushed red. I'm your husband. Were, I corrected softly. You were my husband. Until you signed those papers. The reality hit him like a physical blow. In his greed and excitement, he'd missed the fine print that Marcus had so cleverly buried in the legal language. The separation agreement wasn't just about money. It was a complete dissolution that left him with exactly what he'd brought to the marriage. Nothing. You can't do this, he said desperately. I'll contest it. I'll say you coerced me. With what evidence? I gestured to my laptop screen where a video was playing. Funny thing about Romanos. They have security cameras. The footage shows you reading the entire document, asking clarifying questions, and signing with a smile. You even shook hands with me afterward. His face went white. You recorded us. I recorded a man voluntarily ending his marriage for money. The courts will be fascinated by your enthusiasm. Before he could respond, my phone rang. Alexander Blackstone's name flashed on the screen, and I answered with a bright smile. Mr. Blackstone, how lovely to hear from you. Mrs. Williams, I have some interesting news. It seems Miss Rodriguez received an eviction notice this morning. She's been calling my office all day, quite frantic. Oh dear, I hope she finds somewhere suitable to stay. Actually, she mentioned something curious. Apparently, she was counting on a financial windfall to secure new housing. $500,000, I believe she said. I met Daniel's horrified gaze. How unfortunate. Financial plans can be so unreliable. Indeed. Oh, and Mrs. Williams? You might be interested to know that the FBI raided her apartment an hour ago. Something about wire fraud charges. Daniel grabbed the phone from my hand. What's going on? Where's Isabella? Alexander's voice was coolly professional. I'm sorry, who is this? This is Daniel Blackwood. Isabella Martinez is... Mr. Blackwood. Actually, there is no Isabella Martinez. The woman you know is Isabella Rodriguez, and she's currently in federal custody. I believe your wife has the documentation explaining everything. I took the phone back. Thank you, Mr. Blackstone. I'll be in touch. Daniel stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Federal custody? Camilla, what did you do? I did my homework. I opened the file James had prepared and spread the contents across the kitchen table. Did you know your precious Isabella never legally divorced her first husband? That makes her second marriage bigamy, and her divorce settlement fraud. The FBI has been tracking her for months. His hand shook as he picked up the documents. Bank records, marriage certificates, federal warrants. The evidence was overwhelming. But, she said, she told me she was free to... She told you what you wanted to hear. I pulled out my phone and showed him a recording app. Just like you told me what you thought I wanted to hear. The difference is, I was recording. His face crumpled as the full scope of his situation hit him. No wife, no inheritance, no Isabella, and a mountain of evidence showing he'd knowingly signed away his marital rights for money that was never coming. Camilla, please, we can fix this. I made a mistake, but... A mistake? I laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. Daniel, you planned to divorce me and steal my inheritance to fund your new life with a federal fugitive. That's not a mistake. That's a conspiracy. The front door slammed open, and his parents stormed in without knocking. My mother-in-law took one look at the documents scattered on the table and turned on me with fury. You little witch! You planned this whole thing! Actually, I said calmly, Daniel planned this. I just helped it along. My father-in-law stepped forward, his face threatening. You're going to fix this. You're going to tear up those papers and... Or what? I stood my ground. You'll do what, exactly? This is my house, bought with my money. You have no legal standing here. We'll see about that, my mother-in-law snarled. We'll contest everything. We'll prove you manipulated our son. With what evidence? I gestured to the table. These FBI documents showing your son was conspiring with a federal criminal? The recordings of him admitting he wanted to divorce me for money? The separation agreement he signed after reading every word? She opened her mouth to respond, but her husband grabbed her arm. He was smarter than his wife. He could see the trap had already closed. We should go, he said quietly. We're not done here, she snapped. Yes, I said firmly. You are. I walked to the front door and held it open. You have 5 minutes to collect Daniel's belongings, and then I want all of you out of my house. And, Mrs. Blackwood, I'll need that key back. She practically threw the key at me, her face twisted with rage. This isn't over. Actually, it is. I pulled out another document from Marcus's file. This is a restraining order. If any of you contact me again or attempt to enter my property, you'll be arrested. As they scrambled to gather Daniel's things, I noticed something that made my heart sing. My mother-in-law's purse was open, and there, nestled among her belongings, was something that definitely didn't belong to her. Oh, Mrs. Blackwood, I called sweetly. Before you go, I think you have something of mine. She clutched her purse tighter. I don't know what you're talking about. The spare key to my jewellery box. The one you took yesterday when you were here visiting with Isabella. Her face went pale. That's ridiculous. I would never... Funny thing about security systems, I said, pulling out my tablet. They record everything, including middle-aged women rifling through jewellery boxes while their daughters-in-law are at work. The video was crystal clear. Her sneaking into my bedroom, opening my jewellery box, taking photos of my grandmother's ring, even trying it on her own finger before carefully placing it back. You were cataloguing my jewellery for Isabella, I continued, planning which pieces she'd inherit after you got rid of me. The key dropped from her trembling fingers and clattered on the floor. Keep it, I said. Consider it a souvenir. They left like whipped dogs, Daniel casting desperate glances over his shoulder, as if I might suddenly change my mind and save him from the disaster he'd created. I locked the door behind them and leaned against it, finally allowing myself to smile. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Is this Camilla Williams? This is Agent Sarah Chen, FBI. We need to discuss Isabella Rodriguez and her associates. Are you available for questioning?" Associates. They thought Daniel might be involved in Isabella's crimes. I typed back quickly, "Of course, Agent Chen. I have quite a lot of information to share." Round 3 was about to begin, and this time I wasn't just playing defense. This time I was going for checkmate. Agent Chen arrived exactly 30 minutes after I texted her back. She was younger than I'd expected, with sharp eyes that seemed to catalogue every detail of my living room as she entered. "Thank you for agreeing to meet on such short notice, Mrs. Williams," she said, settling into the chair across from me. "We understand you may have information about Isabella Rodriguez's recent activities." "I have more than information," I said, sliding the thick file across the coffee table. "I have documentation of her entire scheme." Agent Chen's eyebrows rose as she flipped through the pages. "Mrs. Williams, how exactly did you obtain federal banking records?" "I didn't. My private investigator did." I paused. "Everything in that file was legally obtained through proper channels. Your investigator works fast. When you pay premium rates, you get premium service." I leaned forward. "Agent Chen, what I'm about to tell you might sound unbelievable, but Isabella Rodriguez didn't just target me randomly. She's been running this scam for years." I pulled out my laptop and opened a presentation I'd been working on all morning. "Look at this pattern. 3 different cities, 3 different identities, 3 different wealthy husbands." The screen showed a timeline spanning 5 years. In Phoenix, she'd been Maria Santos, targeting a real estate mogul. In Dallas, she was Sofia Hernandez, pursuing a tech entrepreneur. Each time, the pattern was identical. Befriend the wife, seduce the husband, orchestrate a divorce, disappear with the money. She made one mistake each time, I continued. She kept a trophy from every victim. Agent Chen looked up sharply. "What kind of trophy?" "Jewelry. Specifically, pieces with sentimental value that the wives would never willingly give up." I touched my grandmother's ring. "She has a storage unit in each city where she keeps them. Like a serial killer keeping mementos." "How could you possibly know that?" I smiled. "Because she tried to take mine yesterday. And when she couldn't get it legitimately, she had my mother-in-law steal it." I showed her the security footage of Mrs. Blackwood in my bedroom, but this time I'd enhanced the audio. You could clearly hear her on the phone saying, "Isabella, the ring is more valuable than we thought. The appraisal says it's worth over $2 million. Agent Chen's eyes widened. $2 million? It's not just an heirloom. It's a rare Colombian emerald with historical provenance. I pulled out the insurance appraisal I'd commissioned that morning. But that's not why Isabella wanted it. I opened another file on my laptop. This is where it gets interesting. Isabella's first victim in Phoenix. Her ring was a rare Burmese ruby worth $1.8 million. The Dallas victim, a pink diamond worth $2.3 million. She's not just collecting trophies, she's funding her next scam with them. You're saying she's been using stolen jewelry to finance her cons? I'm saying she's been using stolen jewelry to buy new identities. Each ring she steals gets her a new passport, new documentation, new life. I paused. She's not just a con artist, Agent Chen. She's an international jewelry thief with a very specific MO. Agent Chen was already on her phone, calling for backup teams to raid the storage units. As she talked, I received a text that made my blood run cold. Daniel Blackwood and his mother, spotted entering federal building downtown, appear to be turning themselves in. Jay, my private investigator, had been watching them. They thought they could get ahead of the FBI by playing victim. Agent Chen, I said quietly, I think you should know that my husband and his mother may be trying to make a deal with another agent right now. Her phone call stopped mid-sentence. What kind of deal? The kind where they claimed they were Isabella's victims too, and that I was actually her accomplice. The colour drained from her face. Mrs. Williams, where exactly are you getting this information? From someone who's been watching them since yesterday. I pulled out my phone and showed her the photos James had been sending all morning. Daniel and his mother meeting with a man in a federal building. Documents being exchanged. Handshakes. They're going to claim that I manipulated the separation agreement to help Isabella access my inheritance. I continued. They'll say I was the mastermind and she was just the muscle. Agent Chen was already speed dialing someone. Rodriguez is in interrogation room 3? Good. Don't let her talk to anyone until I get there. She hung up and turned to me with new respect. Mrs. Williams, I think you need to come with me. Right now. The federal building was a maze of beige corridors and fluorescent lights. Agent Chen led me through security and into an observation room where we could see into the interrogation chamber. Isabella sat in handcuffs, looking nothing like the polished predator who'd invaded my home. Her designer clothes were wrinkled, her makeup smeared, and her confident facade had cracked completely. She's been asking for a lawyer for 6 hours, Agent Chen said, but she keeps saying she has information about a bigger fish. Let me guess, she wants to trade me for a reduced sentence. How did you? Through the one-way glass, I watched Isabella lean forward desperately as another agent entered the room. I keep telling you, Camilla Williams is the real criminal here. She's been planning this for months. She knew about my past. She blackmailed me into taking her husband. I almost laughed. Even facing federal charges, Isabella was still trying to manipulate the narrative. The interesting thing, Agent Chen said quietly, is that your husband and his mother are telling the exact same story in the next room. She led me to another window where I could see Daniel and his mother with their lawyer. They looked scared but determined, clearly believing they'd found their way out of this mess. They're claiming you masterminded everything, Agent Chen continued, that you somehow knew Isabella was a fraud and used that knowledge to manipulate both of them. Well, I said slowly, they're not entirely wrong. Agent Chen's head snapped towards me. Excuse me? I reached into my purse and pulled out a small recording device. I've been recording everything since the day Isabella walked into my house. Every conversation, every meeting, every phone call. Mrs. Williams, I know it's not all legally admissible, but some of it is, especially the parts where Daniel and his mother discuss how to steal my inheritance and frame me for Isabella's crimes. I handed her the device. It's all there. Their real plan wasn't just to divorce me, it was to have me arrested for conspiracy so they could claim my inheritance as victims of my supposed criminal enterprise. Agent Chen stared at the recording device like it might explode. How long have you known about this? Since the day I died? She blinked. I'm sorry. I told her about the car accident, about Isabella's final words to me as I lay dying, about waking up 3 days earlier with full knowledge of their plan. Mrs. Williams, Agent Chen said carefully, that's not possible. No, it's not. But it happened anyway. I smiled. Call it intuition, call it luck, call it whatever you want. The point is, I knew exactly what they were planning, and I let them think they were succeeding while I built a case against all of them. Agent Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked, what do you want to happen now? I want justice. Real justice. I pulled out one final document from my purse. This is a confession. Signed, witnessed, and notarized. A confession to what? To being the mastermind they're claiming I am. I met her eyes steadily. I confess to deliberately manipulating Isabella Rodriguez into revealing her criminal past. I confess to tricking my husband into signing away his legal rights. I confess to orchestrating the downfall of a criminal conspiracy. Agent Chen read the document with growing amazement. Mrs. Williams, this isn't a confession to a crime. This is a confession to being incredibly smart. Exactly. I stood and walked to the window, where Isabella was still trying to convince her interrogator that I was the villain. She wanted my ring because she thought it would make her rich. What she didn't know is that my grandmother's ring has been in our family for 4 generations, because every woman who's worn it has been smart enough to destroy anyone who tried to take it from her. I slipped the ring off my finger and held it up to the light. The emerald caught the fluorescent glare and threw green shadows across the walls. My grandmother told me this ring would protect me as long as I wore it. She was right. It did protect me. It showed me exactly who my real enemies were, and it gave me the strength to fight back. Through the glass, I watched as Isabella suddenly looked up, her eyes meeting mine across the impossible barrier. For just a moment, her face showed the same cold satisfaction I'd seen as I lay dying on that street. Then, federal agents entered both interrogation rooms, carrying boxes of evidence from the storage unit raids. Isabella's face crumpled as she saw photos of jewellery from dozens of victims across 5 states. Daniel went white as they presented recordings of him discussing how to frame me for crimes I'd never committed. "Mrs. Williams," Agent Chen said quietly, "I have one more question." "Yes? How did you really know about those storage units?" I smiled and slipped my grandmother's ring back onto my finger, where it belonged. "Like I said, Agent Chen, call it intuition." 6 months later, I stood in the courtroom as Isabella Rodriguez was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. Daniel got 5 years for conspiracy and fraud. His parents lost their house paying legal fees. As the judge read the sentences, Isabella looked back at me one final time. I raised my hand slightly, letting my grandmother's ring catch the courtroom lights. She understood the message perfectly. Some women are meant to be protected by precious things. Others are meant to be destroyed by trying to take them. The ring had kept its promise after all.